Greetings, Darklings, from across the interweb. It is once again I, Precious Ken, and I have with me my faithful compatriots.
Bishop Two Pots today, Colin Skipper.
And I'm Katie.
And today we are, as always, very excited to have a great guest. I'm very interested to talk to Mr. Rodney Orpheus of the band The Cassandra Complex. Hi, Rodney.
Hello, that would be me.
This is another interview I'm excited for because you go so far back in the history of goth music and the scene. Well, I'm just saying.
That's right. Start off by telling everyone how old I am.
You know what?
He started in the scene when he was 6 weeks old.
Yeah, he was only 6 weeks old. He came out as a magical fetus and started playing with the Sisters of Mercy,
Something like that, yeah.
So to get us started, a lot of our viewers, though, might not know some of the earlier history of goth and getting started. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the history of how the Cassandra Complex came to be, and what kind of brought you up to this point, and then we'll get talking about the newest single and incarnation out.
Well, I mean, a lot of people, I occasionally get interviewed and people say, "What's it like, being one of the early goth bands?" And I'm like,
Sure.
I don't know, because we weren't an early goth band, because when we started there was no goth.
Right.
We didn't start to be a goth band because there was no such thing. There was no such thing, right? One of what I think some people at the beginning perceived as a weakness, which I've always perceived as a strength, and which I think time has shown, is that we've never really been the kind of band that fits very neatly into a genre box.
Sure.
When we started, I mean, I was listening to stuff like Suicide, Hawkwind, German bands like Tangerine Dream or DAF, electro band, what would now be called electro bands, I guess, or synth bands. And I wanted to make records that didn't sound. I mean, I'm not English, by the way. I'm sort of British. I'm from Northern Ireland. So that means I'm actually legally a dual national. I'm British and Irish. And so I never really had this sense of nationality of being a British musician
Sure.
or an Irish musician. I thought of myself as very European, and I listened to European bands as a teenager. And so I wanted to make a band that had. I love drum machines. I love the roboticism of Kraftwerk and bands like that. I wanted that robotic beat, and like DAF as well, and heavy sequencers and so on. But I also really like big distorted guitars, like the Velvet Underground, or the Sex Pistols, or the Stranglers. And I grew up during the punk period, so as a kid. So what we wanted to do was build this band that had this very electronic, robotic rhythm and stuff, and then this very hard rock and roll thing on the top that was completely opposite of the programmed roboticism, that was really human and really improvised in a lot of ways. And so that's really where it started, and that's what we started doing. And people I moved from Ireland to Leeds through a bizarre series of circumstances. And I was living in Leeds, and I was talking to some guys in my who was sharing my house with me, and they said, "What do you want to do now that you live here?" And I said, "Well, I want to start a band, but I don't know anybody. I don't know any musicians." He said, "That's easy. Just go down to Faversham pub." And I said, "Well, how do I know who are the musicians?" I said, "Everybody there is a musician." and so I went to this pub called the Faversham, and it was full of musicians. It was this whole pub just full of musicians. And I didn't know anyone. And I sat down in like a booth in the corner by myself, and just was like looking around, going, "This is totally weird." And then this guy came and sat down, because he came in, looked around, there was nowhere to sit, and he sat in the booth near me, wearing a black leather jacket and like dyed black hair and stuff. And he was like, "Hi," I don't know who he is. And then he goes up and he puts some money in the jukebox and comes and sits down again. And Suicide's Dream Baby Dream comes in the jukebox. And I'm like, "Did you put Suicide on the jukebox?" And he goes like, "Yeah, you like Suicide?" And I'm like, "It's my favorite band." He goes like, "Really, mine too." I was like, "Oh, okay, great." And then Hawkwind, Silver Machine came on. I'm like, "Did you put a Hawkwind on the jukebox?" He says, "Yeah, you like Hawkwind too?" And I'm like, "Yeah, fantastic band, one of the greatest bands ever." And we started talking. His name was Andrew, and he started this band as well called the Sisters of Mercy. And he was like, yeah, we started this new band, and I really love drum machines and guitars. And I'm like, so do I. I came here to do the same thing. And, you know, and so we used to drive everybody crazy talking about how we were going to, like, change the whole world of music. And everyone was like, these two guys are just totally fucked up and weird. What the hell do they know? Then the day came that I'd been dreading. Andrew came and he said, like, you know, we're supporting the Psychedelic Furs. Do you want to come see my band? And I'm like, and I hate it when people say that. My friends say that to me because usually they suck, you know. and I hate going to see my bands play live on a band that I don't know because they'll come to me after, what do you think? And then I don't know whether to lie and say you were great because then I feel like I'm lying to my friends, which isn't good. Or else I can't just say, well, you sucked, really. You're terrible, because they're my friends, and, you know, you feel terrible about that. But I really like the Psychedelic Furs. So I thought, fuck it, I'll go see the Psychedelic Furs. So I came up, and I was on the guest list, VIP list. There was like a balcony. It was me. There was Kevin Lysett from the Mekons, if you know the Mekons. Wonderful, wonderful punk band, early punk band. And a girl called Claire, who was a big DJ, very important DJ at the time in Leeds. And the three of us were up there. And so this band came on stage and I went down, 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 this big clanging guitar. And I'm like, that sounds kind of cool. And then this guy, Andrew, walks in, my friend Andrew walks in, and he's got the whole thing going. And he walks in and he's got the cigarette, and he sort of hangs over the microphone, and he goes, presses play on this little 606 drum machine, and goes, tick, 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 tick. And then down, 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 down. And I'm like, whoa! And the whole place just went crazy. And I'm like, holy shit, this is the best band I've ever seen in my life. And that's how it all started.
So that story was amazing. But I think more than that, the whole time I'm cracking up thinking about the fact of you started out by, look, we weren't goth. You know, this happened pre-goth. And I hear that story of you sitting alone in a bar, in a pub by yourself full of musicians. And then Andrew Eldritch walks up, and it has to be the most goth thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
that I really can't think of a more truly goth scenario than that happening. So that is hilarious. Another thing you brought up in it is something that, so I was doing a deep dive going through your catalog last night, preparing for this and listening to a lot of things. And I'll tell you, one of the things that really strikes me about Cassandra Complex is something you brought up, and I think that's the punk rock influence in it.
Yeah.
I think you guys get talked about as post-punk or goth or, you know, thing. But really, I think the energy and the fucking teeth of that punk rock and political aspect to everything that you do, and the message in it, is one of the things that's why you didn't sound like everybody or a lot of the bands coming out in that scene and at that time.
Yeah, I mean, how I started, right? There was like, when I was in my early teens or whenever, there was a fanzine called Sniff and Glue, done by Mark Perry from Alternative TV. Amazing early experimental punk band. And they printed, well, actually it was a reprint, I think. They had this cover, and it had 3 guitar chords on it. It was like the bar chords of E, A, and D on the cover.
That's all you need.
And the tagline that said, now form a band. And I looked at it and was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's how it's done. And I did that. And I remember, like, and I went out and bought a guitar for $25 secondhand, and came home and learned E, A, and D and wrote a song on that day. And then the next day I formed a band, and we played that song at our first concert like 3 months later, whenever. And I remember, like, I was at this party, like, and some guy was like, yeah, I'm a musician. And I said, really? I mean, who do you play with? Where do you play? Said, well, I haven't played any concerts yet. I've only been learning for the last 6 years. And I think, you know, once I've learned, really played a little bit more, I'll be ready to play. I'm like, fuck it, dude. I've been playing for like 3 months. And
I've been at it for all of 6 hours.
Yeah, exactly. Who gives a shit, you know? And I'm like, why, you know? The problem is, like, you know, and I was just thinking this today, because I was looking at a fanzine that they had a thing about some famous rock star whose name I will not mention, was eloquently describing his anti-vaccination stance, as if one, gave a shit about some rock star's vaccination stance, and 2, give a shit about anyone who's an anti-vaxxer, right? And I'm thinking, why would anyone pay attention to anti-vaccination stuff just because this guy can play the fucking guitar? What has his ability to play the guitar has no correlation whatsoever to his knowledge of medical science.
It's true.
Right? And in fact, it's got an inverse correlation, because these guys who are actually really good guitarists have probably spent the last 6 years of their life sitting in their bedroom playing the guitar. And they're really, really good at playing the guitar, but they are shit at everything else. And that is the problem with musicians, you know. I mean, most musicians are dumb.
To get good, you do have to you have to put in a lot of focus and time.
There's sacrifices.
And I got no problem with that. I think that it's very, I respect that. I just don't want to be that, you know. And I'm not going to give these people. Yeah, exactly. I mean, but that, I think that's also the big advantage of the punk attitude, is that it says, go out, learn stuff, be political, be real. Talk about the world, relate to the world, and relate that to your audience. Don't just sit in your bedroom for the whole of your life relating to the guitar.
So I think you're touching on something there where I wanted to go with kind of this question. And that's, like I said, I feel like both watching your Facebook page and listening to you talk, but also in your music a lot, that political message is there and always has been. And you kind of are one of those guys that wears it on your sleeve, but you're intelligent about and eloquent about how you express your views on this stuff. You are. I read it. I read a lot of other people's that aren't. Trust me, you are. How important do you think it is to, you know, a lot of people now, the big thing of, well, like you said, let's separate your music from your politics. But to me, music and politics are integral, you know, a part of each other. So how much is it important to you to be able to get across those messages? Like your newest single, obviously, is very much about that. I mean, as an American sitting here, I mean, it is very directly about the Trump administration and what's happening. And talk to me a little bit about why that's important to you, and this particular song, why you felt you needed to express this message.
The Stranglers' first album, there's a song on it which has a line, "It's only the children of the fucking wealthy can afford to be good looking." That's a great line for a lot of reasons. I mean, when people say, well, I'm apolitical, and that's basically saying I've got white privilege. It's only people who are privileged who can afford to be apolitical. Because apolitical in that sense means, it doesn't mean they're political. They're not political. What they're actually saying is, I'm okay with the politics around me. You know, I'm okay, and I don't want to rock the boat because everything's fine for me. You know, if you're a disadvantaged person, if you're a black person, or if you're a gay person or a trans person or whatever, you don't have the luxury of being apolitical.
Yeah.
Right. Because everything you do is political. Everything, you walking down the street, you know, if you're a gay guy who likes to wear dresses and dyes hair blue, you can maybe get away with that here in London. But you try that where I grew up, and, you know, I literally caused a car accident once by walking down the street with my hair dyed blue in the country I grew up in, right? And I was lucky I didn't end up with some, you know, being on the receiving end of that.
Sure.
So, you know, as I say, so I'm political because everything is political. You can't not be political. And if you say you're not political, you are political to the oppressors. You know, inaction in the face of oppression is allowing that oppression, enabling that oppression. So that's why I'm political in that sense. I don't think all music necessarily has to be political. There's a difference between saying being overtly political, which our new single is very overtly political. But then, you know, I can write a love song, like 1 Millionth Happy Customer, for example, which is actually a song about the fear of getting AIDS, which is I want to write a love song about the realities of being in love, like, you can catch a venereal disease.
Sure.
It's the biggest hit ever about a venereal disease. But an STD. But even then, you know, I wanted to write something romantic, and it's a beautiful love song, and people, you know, relate to it. But it's also political in the sense that everything you do has a ramification. Everything you do means something. Everything you do has a wider impact on society outside and it on you. And I've written, like, you know, on the War Against Sleep album, for example, that whole album's just about a relationship. The whole album's really about a relationship I had
Sure.
with my girlfriend and how it all developed and it's a whole story about that. So it's not overtly political in any sense. It's purely personal. And that's also okay. And I think I'm not putting people down who write songs that are just purely personal. I think that's fine. And I'm happy to write songs also that are purely personal. But I'm not going to just do that because life is more than that. Life is more than me and my girlfriend. Yeah, it's more than me. It's not all about, it's all about me. So I think that's something that's it's an approach. And I also, you know, I listen to instrumental music that, you know, I listen to something like Tangerine Dream, which has no meaning in that sense. If you take a band, a purely instrumental electronic band, it has no meaning beyond that. There are no lyrics, there are no political messages, whatever. But on the other hand, the fact that that band made instrumental music purely on synthesizers in the 1970s was itself a political act, in the sense that they were saying they were rejecting the hegemony of rock and roll in that sense. And they were creating a new European music that rejected the Americanisms that came before. So that music in that way had a political impact, in that it said to German people, hey, we're Germans and we can make German music or European music that has no relationship to an oppressive hegemonic culture from outside.
I'm confused. Wait, are you saying that the film Legend was not a documentary that was shot in real time? Because that was my understanding. That didn't really happen with Tangerine? No? Oh, okay.
I mean, I remember, like, I did an interview a long time ago, and someone was asking me about this, and I said, look, you know, I hear British bands and German bands and European bands singing blues songs about standing, you know, hitching a ride on Route 66. You know, I've never been to fucking Route 66. I don't know what it looks like. I've never hitched a ride
Filthy.
there. But, you know, I said, you never hear of a band writing a song about hitching a ride on the Autobahn outside of Frankfurt. And then on the way back to my hotel, I remember thinking to myself, well, I haven't written a song about that either. So I sat down and wrote a song that started standing on the Autobahn just outside Frankfurt. And it was a very deliberate reference to Americana, but taking it and completely twisting it around and changing it and making it very specifically about a European style story. So it was both a gesture of independence from that, if you like, but also a reference to it at the same time. It showed both the influence that was coming in, but also the rejection of that influence, I guess.
Yeah. So touching back on The Crown Lies Heavy, tell me a little bit about, I mean, I know, because I'm going through it, our political fucking fuck to death pile of burning caca we're in, but I really felt like, again, as somebody who is outside of my worldview of being inside the politics of this country right now, I really felt like it struck a perfect chord and really hit on a feeling I'm having and experiencing on that. So tell me a little bit about your thought process in this and how you were seeing the world of American politics from the outside, and then how you painted the picture of it together into this song.
Well, first, it's not just about American politics, and that's why there's like Boris Johnson is
Boris
at the beginning of it, talking about Donald Trump, which I thought was a beautiful irony. You know, the song really was an attempt to channel my rage at the right wing idiots who have pulled the wool over the eyes of so many people, like, you know, Trump in America, obviously, Johnson in the UK, Bolsonaro in Brazil, Orban in Hungary. You know, we have these right-wing demagogues who have been trying to create dictatorships. And how the song came about was actually the original little riff and the original drums were done by Axel and Volker, who are keyboard player and guitar player who live in Hamburg. And they had done that in the studio, a little demo version of the backing track, and sent it to me and said, "What do you think?" And I listened to it, and I'm like, halfway through, I'm like, "Oh my God, this is the next single." Right, halfway through the first, it's a very rough demo. And I was like, as soon as it diddle, and I was like, this is a single, this is a hit, And I listened to it, and I came down, I was in the kitchen making myself some food, and I just put it on the phone and listened to it again. And as soon as the chorus came in, I went, the crown lies heavy on the king, immediately, just like that. And that was the song. I knew that was what it was about. Because, there's a pun in the sense of it's a Shakespearean thing about, heavy is the head that wears the crown. But also about coronavirus, because the word corona is Latin for a crown. And so...
I did not know that.
You didn't get that, right?
I didn't get that. That's awesome.
That's how subtle I really am, So, so I was thinking about coronavirus and these politicians, and the whole thing it was like blinding flash of light. And I thought, isn't it interesting that these guys have done everything they can to oppress people, to keep control of everything. And the thing that can bring them down is a microscopic particle that is killing, millions of people because of their bullshit. And their bullshit, they can't. And the interesting thing about it is that dictators always try and project this image of the strong man, who controls everything. I will be in control. I will give you security. Don't worry about anything because I am there. I will preserve you. I'll build a wall. Let's build a wall and keep the bad things out. And the one thing you cannot control is a disease. And they can't even admit that it's a disease. But this is why Trump and people like that are so obsessive about denying COVID-19, because to admit it is to admit that there's a force bigger than they are. And they can never do that because, and that's why even now, Trump's still trying to tell people, oh, it'll all just go away by itself, it'll all just disappear, everything's going to be great, we're going to have the greatest thing we've ever seen, blah, 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 blah. Because their mentality is that they are 100% in control of everything. They are not that's their political narcissism at play.
Even when they lose an election and they still just,
oh yeah,
nope, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. Nothing to see. Right. I don't believe you. Yeah. No. Yeah, right. I'm still like, I think it's 50-50 where you guys are going to end up with a coup. Trump's been planning for the last 6 months of having a coup. None of this what's happening is any surprise to me. He's laying the groundwork, and all the court cases and things. He knows they're bullshit. Rudy Giuliani's a fall guy. That's all bullshit. They all know it's bullshit. They're not that stupid. They're pretty stupid, but not that stupid. Giuliani and Trump are both seasoned operators. All of that's just theater to get it into people's heads there's something wrong, to give them an excuse to go back. Because the end game is to get the electors to elect Trump, regardless of what the vote is. Right. That's the end game. And that's what we're seeing right now. And I think it was obvious to me that was going to happen like 6 months ago. Yeah. I think part of it that I don't know that everybody always thinks about is this is really a true desperation move, because the truth is Trump owes $450 million. And the only thing that's keeping his collectors off the door is the presidency. Right, the moment that's not there to protect him, the whole world's going to come crash. And that's why he literally can't afford to accept this loss. And so he'll fight it to the death.
Dictator. That's why, the classic meme was the Adolf Hitler in the bunker meme. If you've seen the one where he's like, talking about, we'll just change the votes, whatever. Because it's that bunker mentality. Hitler was still in the bunker, still giving his generals orders, about how to do the war while the Russians were coming into Berlin. It was only at the last minute that they then, shot himself and they all killed themselves, because they, up until the last 24 hours, they still thought they were still living under this delusion that they could win it and turn it around somehow.
I still got it.
Because that level of narcissism is so deeply ingrained that it's you can't just switch it off. But anyway, but so the crown lies heavy on the king. The idea was not just to write about Trump, though Trump was definitely one of the aspects of it, but to write it because all these guys have certain things in common. Like it says in the lyrics, you went to school on daddy's money, paid by slaves. You thought it was funny. They're all none of them. They all like to think that they're self-made men, but none of them are.
By bootstraps and shit. Yeah, but they
right.
all were born on third base.
Yeah, right. They all like to give this. I'm just a working man like you. Bullshit. And all these guys, they were born into riches, second, third generation riches. They never had to work for a penny. For a day in their lives. They don't know what it's like to be a working man. They never fucking work.
Yeah, Donald Trump has never bought a fucking carton of milk in his life.
No.
He's never walked into a store and bought a carton of milk. I guarantee.
He wouldn't even know what to do.
Yeah.
Milk comes in cartons. I don't know. And so I wanted to write a song about this type of mentality, about these rulers, and about who they are. But I didn't want to write a song as well. When I started writing it, I was very conscious. I didn't want to write a song that was just moaning. I didn't want to write a song that just said, isn't it shit? Sure. Isn't Trump shit? Isn't Johnson shit? Aren't these guys shit? Because, yeah, they're shit. We all know they're shit. But I didn't want to write a song that was like, yeah, isn't it terrible? Even though it is. But the song is not about that. The song is about, the fact that we will bring them down. I want to write a song that was hopeful and inspirational. I want to write something that people could sing along to while bringing these people down. I mean, that's why we released it a week before the U.S. election. We actually, I was working my ass off trying to get it finished in time, but I really wanted to get it out before the election because I wanted people to be able to listen to that and sing along to it while going to vote.
While it was happening,
while it was going on, and to say, fuck this shit, we will beat you. No matter what you do, ultimately we are going to beat you. And so that's what the song is about in that sense. So.
When you released it, did you receive any backlash from the far right?
No, surprisingly not. I'm kind of vaguely disappointed.
So am I, because I would love to hear the stories of like the crazy stuff. I've been watching Trump's Twitter like it's my job or something since the election because he's just been losing it. And like it's such a crazy time that the world leaders are communicating on such a public platform as Twitter. Like he fired his the head of Homeland Security on Twitter the other day.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not the first person he fired on Twitter. He's fired several people on Twitter. It's the first time they know about it. Well, the James Comey thing. Did you see the Comey rule?
Yeah.
Excellent show. Brendan Gleeson, Ireland's greatest living actor. I mean, Brendan Gleeson.
I love Brendan Gleeson. He's great.
Portrayal of Trump was just so eerie and evil. It was like, oh. That was a great show. But Comey found out he was fired from, as it shows in the thing, that while he was actually giving a lecture at the FBI headquarters in California, it came up on the TV behind him, and then he looked around and said, "Oh, I've been fired." So that's the typical playbook. On the other hand, freedom is a two-edged sword, as John W. Parsons once said. Yes, Trump is free to go on Twitter, and he's got millions of followers who are reading him, and he can propagandize through that. But the thing about the interesting thing about the internet and Twitter as well is that I have just as much capability of writing tweets as Donald Trump has. We all have. That's what makes the internet so cool. I mean, that's why I get people. I see all the time on Facebook and Twitter, whenever going like, "We should shut these things down. Freedom of speech. We shouldn't allow hate speech." Blah, blah. I'm like, allow it. Allow the whole shit. Allow it all, because there's more of us than there are of them. We don't have to stop them talking. We just have to drown them out.
Yeah, it's tough. I think that's a hard one, and I think that is a gray area of both looking at the positive and negatives. But I think you're right in a sense of everybody, to me, most of the people I know recognize when someone is just a asshole, racist, whatever, and they're just calling themselves out.
Right, exactly.
Where most rational people that read anything can make that judgment. And it's hard to say like, oh, these a-holes like Proud Boys or whatever can influence people with their nasty hate speech or something. But at the same time, Man, they do. Like,
Right.
it gets
I
scary,
agree.
and sometimes that rhetoric leads to genuine violence, which
Sure.
is a terrifying thing, you know?
I completely agree. That's why I say we need more rhetoric against it.
Yeah.
That's why I do what I do. That's my job, but it's all of our jobs. That's
Sure.
why the internet is such a good thing. For the first time ever, everyone controls the media. You know, like we tend to think these. Oh, it's terrible. The media are controlled by blah blah blah. If you look back 50 years ago, 100 years ago, there was nothing except government-controlled media. Like rich people controlled media. Hearst newspapers. It's the classic story. People are like, oh yeah, people are looking at the phone and reading Proud Boys propaganda. 100 years ago, they were reading Hearst newspapers. Everybody in America was reading Hearst newspapers, who were telling them that black people should all be strung up, and there was nothing else. There was nothing, literally nothing else, except that. So we're in a much better position now than ever before. Because we actually can create our own media, and people actually, like I saw a classic thing the other day. Somebody posted something on Facebook. Some American friend of mine posted, it's like, we used to be told that the reason why Europeans lived longer was because of olive oil or sun-dried tomatoes or some shit like that.
Yeah, the diet or whatever, sure.
Yeah, the Mediterranean diet or whatever. But now we actually know the reason why Europeans live longer is because they've got free healthcare.
Right. Although, for real, I mean, I was in Greece for a while, and that diet does change your life.
Absolutely, but you take my point.
Two things can be true. Yeah, two things can be true at the same time. But yes, you're dead on right. And I mean, I know, as somebody who lives in, like I said, a country where the wealth disparity is just so enormous and at a record pace for the history of our country,
and growing more and more and more,
where it's just crazy. And I think nothing else really shows that than you look at the level of healthcare for like the top 10% in my country versus the bottom 60% or whatever of the population. It's night and day in terms of what you get. And you wouldn't think that was true because of the level of technology that we have in Europe, America, but that technology isn't for everybody, and that level of And so,
I mean, you've got like Silicon Valley billionaires with the Blood Boy, You've seen the Blood Boy
right,
thing,
right, yeah. Like,
or literally they literally get young athletic men off the streets and they wire up tubes to them and they take their blood.
Yeah.
They're literally vampires.
That is some Bram Stoker ass shit right there.
I know, but it actually happens. So.
So, like, you've seen how our election has kind of been panning out and stuff, how there are like 79 million people who voted for Joe Biden and about 73, a little close to 74 million people voted for Donald Trump.
That's a terrifying number.
I know, right?
After 4 years, I mean, I could maybe forgive them 4 years ago. They didn't know what they were getting into, but after 4 years of Trump, anyone who voted for him after 4 years is a fucking idiot. And that's you guys' biggest problem. No matter what happens, and of course Biden is won. Right. Even if you manage to stave off a coup, you got to figure out what you're going to do with the other 74 million people who still think that Trump is actually somehow
going to save them or something. Yeah.
Do you think that leadership is a reflection of society, or society is a reflection of leadership?
Good question.
It's heavy.
Yeah,
I like it.
This is a really, really good question, and I could literally spend the next hour discussing that question. And
we're never even going to get to music, and I love it.
Right. I'm always highly wary of leadership in general, and which is ironic because I've been the leader of this band for a very long time, and I've been senior executive at various corporations and stuff. So I've done leadership, and I'm a very good leader in that sense. I've been in leadership positions in my entire career, practically. But I'm still really freaking wary of leaders in general because they tend to suck. I mean, the old adage, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Sure.
Is very, very true. Power does corrupt, and as a leader myself, when I'm in a leadership position, I'm continually questioning myself, continually second guessing myself, continually. I remember like I was moderating a music business conference in Dublin a few years ago, and there was a whole bunch of musicians there. There was a panel of people, like, a guy from some leading record company executive, some guy from a pub, the usual kind of music business panel. And there are all these wannabe musicians sitting around asking questions. And someone asked the question, like, what do you think is the most important quality that a musician has to have? What's the most important thing if you want to succeed? And somebody said, and one of the panelists said, every musician I know succeeds because of self-belief. They have a passion for their music. Their passion drives them. They believe in everything they do, and it drives them forward. And that's what you need. You all need to get that self-belief and drive it forward. And everyone went, yeah, and cheered and all the rest of it. And then it came back to me, and I'm like, well, actually, I've met a lot of famous musicians. I've traveled the world and worked with, and I'll tell you, every great musician I know has one thing in common, and that is crippling self-doubt.
Yes.
Every shitty musician believes they're great, but every great musician believes they're not that good, really. And that kind of crippling self-doubt, that's what drives you forward, because you're continually trying to prove, fuck me, I got to do better. This is like, oh, it's not good enough. I've got to get this thing, what's inside me, out of here, and you're driven forward by that sense of having a backpack full of rocks on your back that you've got to get rid of. It's not some kind of, look at me, I'm the greatest in the whole world kind of bullshit. No, that does not create great. And I think there's a lot of ways the same with leadership. If you've got a complete and utter faith in your own ability, you're Donald Trump.
And you're crazy.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that's kind of always bothered me about people in leadership roles in general, is who the fuck thinks I'm the guy. I am the guy that can fix all of your problems, everything that's wrong. I have the answers for everything.
Well, it's the Don and Krieger Effect. Have you heard of the Don and Krieger Effect?
Yep.
Right. Two psychologists, Dunning and Kruger, they did a study into belief and ability. And they realized that people who were extremely capable always underestimated their own abilities, whereas people who were not very capable always overestimated their abilities. And this completely surprised them. And they realized the reason why that is because people who are not capable have no context. They don't understand that they're not capable.
They don't understand.
They're not smart enough to know that they're stupid, because they're stupid.
This is giving me a huge complex, though, because anytime I get confident, I'm like, oh shit, does this mean I'm actually really dumb? And I just don't know it.
Well, that is the problem. I mean, you've got to try and balance that out all the time. But I think nothing is more dangerous than the modern conception that you're great and you can do everything. All you have to do is have passion. It's like bullshit. Yeah. Bullshit. W.B. Yeats, the Irish poet, 100 years ago, he wrote he was talking about Irish poets, and he said, the best lack all conviction, the worst are filled with a passionate intensity. And Lou Reed, there's a Lou Reed album called Take No Prisoners, and he starts by quoting that. He says, the best lack all conviction, the worst are filled with a passionate intensity. Now you figured out where I'm at. And I thought that was awesome. That was perfect, because if there was a person who performs like they lack conviction, it's Lou Reed. It's like, whatever.
I saw him live once, and I think the best thing I can say about the show is, even though, I mean, this is much later in his career, and it was a huge sold out show. Mm-hmm. I mean, probably like 50,000 people or something. Mm-hmm. Yet it felt like he was playing alone in his living room. I don't know if I've ever seen anybody that could make a show feel so intimate in a stadium venue show. Like, I remember having my mind blown at that time that, like, how does this guy do it? Where I feel like it's just me and him in front of a fire, and he's got an acoustic guitar, and nobody else is here, yet everybody else is here.
Well, I used to work, a friend of mine, Fred Maher. Fred he grew up in the middle of nowhere, and when he was 16, his parents moved to New York, and he He bought himself. His dad bought him a drum kit, and he started drumming. And he thought he'd form a band or join a band. So he was looking through the Village Voice, and there was an ad in the back like drummer wanted, must be into the Velvet Underground. So he went, okay, that'll do. It'll be a Velvet Underground cover band or something, you know. And that's so easy, you know. And so he answered the ad and was told to come around for a rehearsal. And he went in to rehearse, and he got the drum kit set up, and he was ready. And Lou Reed walks in, and he was auditioning for Lou Reed. He didn't realize.
Oh my God.
And he was 16 years old. And Lou Reed said, yeah, do you know Play Blue Eyes? And he goes, sure. He just like, okay, you got the job. And that's how he became the drummer for Lou Reed. And he ended up producing the New York album when he was 16 years old. Yeah. Answered an ad in the Village Voice for a drummer that can play the Velvet Underground.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
It's funny. I was actually a Matt Finale of a band, Caustic and Clack, that are popular that I like here, was kind of talking the other day about that he has this feeling often of like an imposter syndrome. In spite of the fact he's been very successful, but like it's easy to feel that. And I'm watching down the line as all these musicians that are friends of his chiming in and kind of saying, yeah, like the same. You know, I mean, in his case, he was talking about wishing he had a better technical expertise of some of the equipment end of, you know, the synthesizers or things he's working on. And like I said, I feel that so much. If it wasn't for fucking Colin, I would be utterly lost in a lot of ways like this. So but I think what's interesting to me is, to your point, through doing this webpage and interviews and talking with people, I mean, I've talked with hundreds of musicians now at varying levels of notoriety and, you know, but I think that same feeling of imposter syndrome that like everybody else must know something that I don't is one of the most common threads of literally everybody that I've ever talked to in this business, you know, and it is a tie that binds everybody, you know, is this feeling that thinking that everybody else has a wisdom or whatever glimpse into this or something that you don't. And maybe that's what, to your point, keeps artists driving for something else. Like it is that fire within them is always having that feeling.
And that's not to say that you shouldn't strive for technical excellence.
Of course.
I mean, you know, when I've been obsessed with technology from a very young age, and I bought my first synthesizer, like it was secondhand from a kid in Sheffield who didn't know how to use it. Twiddled the knob, read the manual from cover to cover like 25 times. So I tried to figure out everything I could find out about how a synthesizer worked. I'm still a terrible fucking keyboard player. I'm a terrible keyboard player. I'm a terrible guitar player. Because I haven't got, and I mean, I used to play guitar on some of the records, but now my band just will not let me. I've got guitars there, and I'm not allowed to play them because I'm so terrible. But I do know how the rest of the technology works, the keyboards. And I was saying to Katie earlier, like half the technology in here, I ended up actually designing it because I wasn't happy with the technology we had. It needed to get better. And you know, and I started working for a company called Steinberg back in the day, built Cubase. And everybody there, that was a great company to work, especially in areas, because that company was really left-wing, anarchistic, and we weren't making software in order to be rich software developers. We were making music software because we wanted everybody to make music. We wanted to democratize the process, because back in the day, you know, if you wanted to make an album back then, you know, you had to spend like 150 grand to rent a studio with big tape machines and all this arcane bullshit, and, you know, and get a Mellotron that took 4 men and a truck to get it around, you know. Things like that just prevented people like me from being able to produce the kind of records we wanted. If I wanted a string section, you know, I had to hire a string section. I couldn't just put it in a sampler and let's go, you know, get out of the computer. So we were very keen on building software that would run on cheap computers and put a studio in the computer. That's why we invented VST, Virtual Studio Technology. And the reason it was called that was because we literally wanted people to have the technology of a studio in their homes.
Yeah.
And so that was another aspect, if you like, of the political thing. It's not just singing about it. It's not just, hey, everybody, let's change the world. It's actually going out and manufacturing and creating the tools,
making the information
that would allow
at
people to
even
do
level.
that and enable people to do that.
Yeah.
And that's been another thing that's been very important to me all my life is actually providing that enabling technology.
I think another thing too, going along with that is really interesting now. I know Stephen Archer, our friend, talks about this a lot, that look, even if you're not an expert on that piece of technology, unlike back in the day where maybe you had to almost get like an internship with someone or pay your dues and go, nowadays you can Google search on the internet, look up literally any program, any synthesizer, any modulator, that watch a YouTube video on it, see a step-by-step instruction, read a manual.
Really.
And
you
if
can
you want to
email
put in
the guy that made it.
Yeah, if you want to put in 2 hours time, I am the guy who made the software.
And they'll probably tell you.
You can get that level of access. And yeah, you're right. Like, to anybody who wants to put in the sweat on that, you can become an expert in the studio on that piece of equipment then. And have access to that. Right. I mean, you don't need a 4-year degree or anything anymore to do this. You can just find it.
Well, I mean, I ended up teaching music technology in college, but I never went to college to learn music tech. There wasn't when I went to college, you couldn't do a music tech degree. Music was like learning to play the piano or a violin. You know, and how I learned about music tech was when we did our first album, we rented a studio because we had to. There was no other option. So all the way through recording, I sat beside the engineer and was like, what does that button do? How do you do that? What is that? How do you wire that to that? I drove him absolutely fucking crazy. Asked everything he could. I watched everything he did, asked all the questions all the time. And then after that, I was like, well, that's the last time we're ever going to do that again.
Like CAD or something, like it.
Yeah, I just like
tried.
I was just I immersed myself in it completely and just like, read everything I could and started doing it myself because it was like, if he can do it, why can't I do it? It's like
the last interview we had was with Raymond Watts that we just and he was kind of talking about how much he missed the mad scientist aspect of the patch phase back then. And I mean, that's not a thing, but just the sheer like chaos of it. Like
I don't miss that at all. I hate that shit. I mean, it's like, I know loads. I've loads of friends who are, they're getting big Eurorack systems, all the patch bases.
Sure.
I mean, when I started, I had, if you're a tech guy, I in our basement studio, and the first Cassandra Complex records were made in our basement studio, right? And I had a Roland TR-808, a Roland TR-909, a Korg MS-20, a Korg MS-50, a Korg SQ-10, a Roland SH-101, Sequential Circuits Pro 1, all this really expensive analog gear. I bought it all for peanuts in junk stores because back then nobody wanted it. I paid like 50 quid for my TR-909. It's probably worth 5,000 now, and I had a huge analog system, massive analog system, and I must have spent like less than $500 on it, the whole thing. And then it got stolen. It got we got robbed. And luckily I was insured, but and I was heartbroken. But then afterwards I'm like thinking, really, and I could easily buy all that shit again. I could easily buy that stuff now. And do I want it? No, fuck no. No, I don't want that shit. I don't want to go back to having to do patch cables. It's right. Yeah, I have one keyboard here and everything else is, and I've got a vocoder here, and a couple of other old modules that I really like. Everything else is in the computer. Fuck that shit. I just want to turn it on and make it work, I don't care. And I go, people like, well, don't you want the real analog sound? It's like, no, I don't, because there's no such thing as an analog sound anymore.
It can be reproduced.
What we're doing, this is analog, this is digital. As soon as it goes in the computer, it's digital. Yeah. Right? Simple as that. There's no analog. Nobody ever hears an analog synth except you, because the moment you record it, it's no longer analog. It's digital by definition. So, even live, you're going through a digital mixing desk.
Yeah.
So who gives a shit? It's all computers. And digital equipment is just a computer. A digital synthesizer is just a really stupid computer with a keyboard attached to it.
Colin, do you want to ask Rodney about his shoes?
Well, no, not about shoes. I wanted
Shoes?
to ask about hats.
Hats, okay. Hats are important.
So, are there any epic hats that you've owned throughout the years?
Hats.
We were going to give the background. We started out, Jared Lush of ChemLab, we got talking about his shoes. And he always has the most craziest, amazing shoes.
Yes.
And so we kind of ask, when
footwear?
you're in the vocal booth.
Yeah,
I love Jared. Jared got me my first record deal in America.
Really? That's awesome.
Yeah, and the very first time he played in America, Jared was literally the first person I met.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I have a great love and regard for Jared.
But we'd ask him, if you go into the vocal booth, do you need to get the right take, to get in the right headspace? Is there a pair of shoes or an accoutrement or a hat or something? You sing better doing the take if you have this fetish,
dumb thing.
This item of power that helps you get there.
Okay, really long, interesting question. Really short, boring answer. No.
Perfect.
I look terrible in a hat, so I very rarely wear hats. So if it's like really cold or really, really, really hot and sunny, I'll stick something on top of my head. But it's, I have a Cassandra Complex baseball cap that I still wear because it's it's got me on it. But and actually, my gaming guild, I made some merchandise for my gaming guild, so it's I've got gaming guild merchandise on a baseball cap. I occasionally wear that. Nobody knows what it means, but I don't care. But I'm not a big hat wearer, and I do like shoes. Shoes are important, but
you don't have a particular pair that makes you get that. Okay,
I love clothing. My second ever job was selling secondhand clothes in a market stall. I do love clothes, and I do love fashion, though it's utterly ludicrous. And my wife is like a complete fashionista, and I completely love that too. But whatever, I can take it or leave it.
Okay.
Here I am wearing a t-shirt.
We struck out on that one,
and I'm just wearing pajama bottoms right now because he was having a nap earlier. Can be bothered fitting the rest.
I don't even have pants on at all. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. I figured all you're going to see is the top half, so who cares what's on the bottom, right?
Follow up then, we're going to change gears, and this one I know we'll hit on. Right now, I am aware that you are deeply involved in the video game Fallout 76.
Yeah.
And I need to know if you are playing this game and how you think it is preparing you for the inevitable global collapse future within the next 15 years.
It's funny you should say that because my wife's a big game player as well. We play a lot together. We've been playing GTA Online a lot together. My wife is a complete badass. She just hit level 100 in GTA Online, so she's busy. Right now, I can guarantee you, she's sitting in the house refitting her sports cars and buying more weapons. She's very much a badass. And so I started playing Fallout 76 just a few weeks ago, and I love it. It's a wonderful game. Post-apocalyptic Appalachia. It's really dark humor. And I was saying to my wife, you should play this. It's a great game. She's like, I don't want to play that. I'm going to have to live through it. She's younger than me, yeah. And yeah, I mean, you guys, if you're a young person, believe me, the world. I mean, I wish. I'm not glad that I'm an older person now. I remember having dinner with Timothy Leary once, a long time ago.
Wait, what the fuck?
Younger. Timothy Leary, Timothy
I know who Timothy Leary is. Yeah. You had dinner with him, okay?
Yeah, I went to see Timothy Leary doing a talk once. I'll tell you the story. Timothy Leary was doing a talk just before the end of his life. He was doing a talk, and I turned up late. I had some transfer problems. Or came in late. It was a big hall, and it was all full. And right at the back, they had like a bleacher kind of thing. And I sat up right at the very back on this bleacher. And Tim was doing this whole thing, and it was all full of hippies who were all like Timothy Leary, psychedelics, drugs, blah blah blah, usual kind of crap. And Tim was like talking about stuff, and someone said to him like, "What do you do for a living? What do you consider yourself?" And he was like, "I consider myself a modern liberator. I consider myself, I'm here to teach you how to liberate yourselves. Are you with me on that? And everyone, yeah. And he said, I'm here to show you a different reality. Are you with me on that? And everyone, yeah. I'm here to show you that you don't have to follow leaders anymore. And everyone's like, are you with me on that? And he says, yeah. And then there was this pause. And then at the back, there was this one voice going, no. That was me. And there was this giant like pause. And everyone looked around, and Tim said, that guy at the back of the room is the only one there that knows what the fuck I'm talking about.
Wow. That's crazy. And you had dinner with him afterwards.
And so afterwards, he invited me to dinner. So we went to dinner, we were hanging out, and I'm like, and he was like, I don't know, 80 or something. This was in Hamburg, and he was like, we had dinner. He was like, hey, Rodney, do you know any good clubs we can go to after this? And I'm like, I started laughing, and I was like, he says, why are you laughing? And I'm like, God, man, you make me feel better about getting old, because you're 80 years old. Here you are, you're touring the world, you're enjoying like dinner, hanging out with people. Now you want to go clubbing and dancing and stuff, and that gives me a lot of hope for being older. And you're just reading your phone when I'm talking about this.
I'm not. I'm listening.
It's very rude, Ken.
I'm
rude.
Researching something. I was going to ask.
Oh, researching. Okay, that's what you call it now. Anyway, and he said, look, and he looked at me and said, let me tell you something, Rodney. Let me tell you about getting old. It fucking sucks. And so anyway, yeah. So anyway, but the problem with being young now is that you guys are gonna hit a world that's an ecological disaster zone.
Right.
And the problem is, it's almost certainly too late right now. That it's almost certainly too late to fix that. I mean, if people. I mean, I remember even a couple of years ago, people were saying, "Well, we've got to do something to stop the impending, ecological catastrophe." The ecological catastrophe is already happening.
Yeah,
it's already happened. It's just happening so slowly that most people. It's up until only now people are starting to realize we're already past the catastrophe point. Is way back there in the rearview mirror, but people just didn't notice because they're not used to thinking in those terms. So I get my wife's point. I mean, Fallout 76, that is what the world could be like in like 50 years' time.
Well, and I feel bad for sci-fi writers because we're at this point of how do you think of a more dystopian setup
reality
than where we're already at? Like I got nothing on looking outside the window and watching the news. So
if you read something like a science fiction author like Bruce Sterling, for example, really great author, or Kim Stanley Robinson. Both of those authors have written a lot about ecology in the future. Bruce Sterling's first novel, Involution Ocean, was about planet with mainly water, but he wrote a couple of stories, Heavy Weather and stuff like that are about what happens when the ecology starts to break down. And everyone should read Kim Stanley Robinson. Kim Stanley Robinson is one of the greatest writers of our time. And he wrote a series about Mars, which everyone should read. It's about
my brother is always telling me about this. Mm-hmm. This has been on my list for a while that I need to read.
Yeah, you should. And he wrote a book called Antarctica. He went to Antarctica and researched, and he wrote a novel. It's a really great, gripping novel, but the background is Antarctica falling to pieces, literally under their feet, which is literally happening. He was there watching it. So Kim Stanley Robinson has written a lot of really interesting, very socialist, very interesting dystopian and utopian novels too. So I'm a big science fiction fan.
That does tie into something I did want to ask you about, because I mean we've talked about music, politics, a lot of things. You're also I haven't read it yet. I just learned about this last night, but you're a published author, right? And in particular, didn't you do a book on Crowley?
2 books.
2 books on Aleister Crowley. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, what got you into Aleister Crowley? Is a fascinating subject, and tell me a little bit about the book and where I can get a copy of that.
At any local bookstore or Amazon.com. Yeah, when I was a teenager, I'm a voracious reader. I'm a speed reader. I mean, when you see me read, it's like watching the Terminator or something. It's like I read like a page in 30 seconds. And when I was touring a lot with the Cassandra Complex, I used to have a flight case full of books, literally just a flight case full of books on the back of the bus. And I wasn't allowed to speak because my voice was going hoarse all the time. So I just sat in the back of the bus and read all day long. Like so I'm a really voracious reader. So when I was a teenager, I picked up a book called Magic and Occult Primer at my local library, and it was fascinating. So I got very interested in occultism and magic and whatever you want to call it. And then I started reading, had a reading list at the back. So I went through the reading list and started reading Crowley. And Crowley is kind of like the Einstein of magic in the sense that he took all the science, all the stuff that came before, and packaged it into a grand coherent theory, and then sort of revamped it. And so he's very important in the continuum, if you like. His work, because he was as a human being, he was pretty much an asshole. But his work is really interesting, especially as very technical, magical stuff. And so I started reading a lot about that. And then when I was in my late 20s, I think, I decided to write a book about it, a beginner's book, mainly because people kept asking me stupid questions about it all the time. And
you figured you'd compile a FAQ all in one place.
Right, yeah, that's exactly what I did. I basically I wrote a FAQ, and it became a book. And I published it through, it was actually published originally in Sweden with a guy called Carl Abrahamsson, who's in a wonderful band, who did a wonderful one called White Stains, which is named after a Crowley book. There's a great record called At Stockholm by Genesis P-Orridge and Carl and White Stains, which I heavily recommend. At Stockholm by White Stains and Genesis P-Orridge. And so Carl published the book, and it did incredibly well. It did really, really well. We published the second edition, and that sold out. And then I licensed it to Samuel Weiser Red Wheel Weiser in America. And it's now in its fourth printing. It's been in print for like 20 years or something.
Time to get a Christmas gift for myself.
It's probably the best selling book in Crowley and magic, for maybe the best ever. I mean, it's a big seller. I mean, it sold a lot. I mean, it's not going to make New York Times or anything laugh, but it's done very, very well. Sure. And then a few years ago, I wrote a second book, which was called Grimoire of Alistair Crowley, which is group rituals that people can actually do. Because the books are very practical. I mean, I'm all about doing. It's not about, hey, look, you can be sit and stare at your navel, and you can be lovey-dovey, and white light will pour from, and come kiss my Yuki gas. It's none of that bullshit. It's like, hey, it's like the punk mentality. It's like, hey, yeah, take this book, grab this, and this, and go ahead and do shit. Boom.
Sure.
Knock yourself out.
And I mean, I guess, like, I've had times when I've dabbled in magic, and to me, that's just it. I have always loved the practical aspects like that of, to me, magic is a way of aligning and structuring your thought process and how to view so that you actualize a goal that you have in mind. And to me, I think that's the thing people don't always understand about magic, is it's not about, the burning of the incense or whatever. All of those things are to help you have the right mindset and focus to achieve a specific goal. And it's not that a fireball is going to shoot out of your fucking hand. It's that you're going to be in the right emotional spiral that you're trying to get, that's going to lead you to the thing that you want. And it's a self-growth,
Right.
And
absolutely.
But instead, I think people get caught up in whatever, like the culty sex magic of Crowley, or things like that. Which, I mean, I guess, yeah. I mean, like you said, you can't separate the man from what he was doing in the aspects of it. But at the same time, that's what real magic is almost kind of, I think of it more like the Matrix or whatever.
Sure.
Of deciding to outline your focus to fit this specific goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's 100% correct. I mean, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in gods and demons and all that shit.
Sure.
I mean, I'm wearing a NASA shirt. That's what I believe in. I believe in science, and I believe in us, in humanity, and so it's just So yeah, everything you just said. It's about self-actualization. It's about understanding yourself and how you relate to your environment in a deeply personal way. And that's what it's about for me. So
I'm unfortunately still caught up at white light shooting out of my navel, because
That just sounds.
I'm ready for that.
Yeah.
How do we get there?
yeah, okay. Listen to your Velvet Underground records. White light.
I did see that you have another book coming out in December of 2021 called Delinquent Elementals, The Very Best of Pagan News.
Oh, it's December 2021. I better finish it. Yeah, that's right. I mean, yeah, like back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, a guy called Phil Hine and I ran a magazine called Pagan News. And that was back in the Satanic Panic time. And I don't know if you guys have heard of the Satanic Panic. It's when I try to describe it to young people these days, they look at me like in blank astonishment. So back then, there was a huge movement that came out of the USA, of course, the evangelical movement that was talking about, that babies were being kidnapped by evil Satanists and raped and used in rituals, blah blah blah.
Dungeons and Dragons in the dungeons.
Dungeons and Dragons was a gateway to occult, satanic power and all that kind of crap, which turned out to be the only part that was true.
Is that what happened to me?
Yeah, exactly. It happened to me too. But it was a huge thing, and it spread to the UK and beyond. And these people were giving huge lectures to the police and social work and so on. Hundreds of people were getting their babies taken away from them because they were Satanists, thrown in prison without trial. And it was a nightmare. It's a fucking nightmare. And it was all wrong. And so Phil and I decided to do a monthly magazine that would expose all this, that would write it from the pagan occulty perspective and combat this insidious and incredibly overt propaganda that was coming out about Satanists. And it's coming back now. The
QAnon. What the fuck?
The QAnon thing is the Satanic Panic revisited.
Didn't we already do this?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we want to do the compilation of all the stuff we wrote back then, is to show people, because we wrote for years, loads and loads of articles and exposures, and we did loads of research and brought articles, and basically we helped to destroy the entire background and aspects that they had. All the pseudoscience, we just got rid of. We trashed it completely, and it was very fun. We had a very funny and very sarcastic punk rock kind of attitude towards things, and so a publishing company now want to republish that. So we're working on redoing that. It's actually going to end up coming out in MIT Press, which is so funny that these two kids in a squat in Leeds doing this wacky magazine, and it was printed. We had it printed. Do you remember Chumbawamba?
Yes. And before that they were Crass, right?
No, they were different people. I mean, Chumbawamba were like Crass. Everyone knows the "I get down, you get up again," blah blah blah. But Chumbawamba were this radical left-wing anarchist socialist collective in Leeds, and they owned a printing press. They bought a printing press, and they were the only people who would publish our magazine, so they published it for us.
That's awesome.
God love Chumbawamba.
Whatever, that song's a fucking jam.
And we did this wacky little thing, and it was like, it was like 8 pages of photocopied stuff, and it became like a serious magazine later. Well, serious, I don't know. And it was we brought it every month for years, and hundreds of thousands of people read it. And now it's going to come out in MIT Press, so
that's awesome.
I'm in on that too. I need a copy of that too.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun book, I think. Yeah.
So the Satanic Panic always struck me as something that was kind of like the Salem witch trials or McCarthyism, where it was like a witch hunt and stuff.
Absolutely. Exactly that.
Given that you're like so well spoken and that you know a lot about like these arcs in history, why do you think that society looks for a witch hunt so frequently?
Because it's a control aspect. It's the same right wing. It's part of that sort of right wing control mentality. What William Burroughs called the control syndrome. The control mentality is that I'm a strong leader. I know better than you. I will protect you. I will control the environment. Nothing can go wrong. There will be no chaos. There will be no weirdness. Everything will be the same. Everyone will be white and blonde and whatever. You know, they have to build this. They have to build this structure of complete control over everything. And the easiest way to control people is to make them scared. And the easiest way to make them scared is to provide a common enemy that's vague and awful and purely evil, that's going to come and get your children. And whether that's gay people, you know, because they used to say, you know, it used to be, you can't let gay people do things, they'll come and get your children. It'll turn your children gay, you know, like, and that's been an argument for hundreds of years and still is in many countries in the world. Or it's Jews, or it's black people, or it's whoever. Just
whoever the boogeyman they need.
Whoever the boogeyman can be. And Satanists are great, because Satanists are great in the same way that Jews are great, because they're a great enemy to have, because you never know. They're weird and strange, and they're not like us, and we don't know much about them, but they could be among you. It could be your neighbor. You don't know, do you? It might be. Only I can protect you from the insidious influence of, or the commies, you know, like McCarthyism.
See, I think that's just it when you say McCarthyism.
Yeah, it's McCarthyism was exactly the same thing. I mean, and McCarthyism was all about the commies, but just like Hitler did, they somehow managed to equate the Jews and the communists, because they both believe in globalism, and QAnon. They're always talking about George Soros. The whole George Soros thing is a perfect example of that, because he's Jewish. You know, he's Jewish. He's foreign. He's different. He's successful. And you know, one of the reasons why George Soros is the ultimate modern bogeyman is because he's the only billionaire who actually gives a shit. Right? George Soros takes his money and literally don't spend it on doing good things. He builds universities and hospitals. You know, and so the QAnon kind of people, the controllers out there hate him, because he is the billionaire who broke ranks. He's the traitor billionaire. He's the billionaire who's actually trying to educate people instead of just trying to enslave them. And that's why he's such a big bogeyman to the right in the US and everywhere else. And he's Jewish. It's like it's a perfect summation of that. And Satanists are perfect as well, because they're not like us. They're weird. They don't pledge their allegiance to the flag and God like we do.
Right.
You know, and
I think one of the reasons,
you don't have the great thing about the Jews or the Satanists or the commies or whatever, you don't have to ascribe any real logic to it. You don't have to go, they believe this way because of this. They're just bad. Right? You know, communism is bad. I've never read Karl Marx, but I know it's terrible.
I was saying, I think one of the reasons too why this keeps coming up and is so powerful is, like you said, the boogeyman is created and a demagogue says, I'm the only one that can protect you. But I think the other piece of this that's more insidious and goes further is complicity. It's that by doing QAnon or Proud Boys or the Nazis or anything, you have to be involved. I will protect you, but I can't do it without your help. You're my eyes and ears. And once you make somebody complicit in the crime of subjugating someone else, there's no going back. They own you then. They control you, because if you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound.
Yeah, because
and that's how they do it.
And that's why you get 74 million people who will still vote for Trump, because to admit that maybe they were wrong about Trump
is to admit something they don't want to hear about themselves.
The whole edifice will have to come crumbling down. You can't even have one hole in the dike, you know, because then the flood is going to come in. So they have to keep, you know, building that wall in their minds higher and higher and higher.
Literally and figuratively.
Literally and figuratively, they've got to build that wall, because that's and once that wall comes down, it's over. You know, I was in Berlin when the Berlin Wall came down, right? And that was literally that process in action. It was incredible, you know, because the Eastern Germany had been under a communist in inverted commas, had been under a totalitarian system for decades, and they built that wall. They didn't build the wall to keep people out. They built the wall to keep their own people in. You know, that it was literally there to stop people getting to the West and stop people getting any idea of freedom. And when the wall came down, it was just astonishing. It was one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life. And the emotional, you know, when that wall came down, it was just like a huge wave of emotion just came across there. It wasn't just the physical wall. It was all those walls of totalitarianism. Those mental walls just fell apart. I was actually the day after it first came. They were still bringing it down. I went back to the very night it came down. I was in Hamburg at a concert by the Young Gods, amazing band from Switzerland, and the concert. And we had just heard the wall was coming down, and the concert was in a concert hall where the Beatles used to play in Hamburg, called the Große Freiheit, which literally means the big freedom, right? Because Hamburg has always been this. I lived in Hamburg for many years, and so did Andrea and the sisters and various other Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry. We all lived there, and Hamburg's always had this attitude that, you know, sex and drugs and rock and roll. It's you walk down Hamburg in the middle of the night and it's like just full of people just having a good time, whatever that entails. And so during the concert, the place started filling up because all these Eastern Europeans just jumped in their shitty little Travi cars and drove to Hamburg because they wanted that great freedom, that große Freiheit. As soon as the wall came down, they came to Hamburg because they wanted, and prostitutes were like, you know, they had the best night ever because these people wanted sex and drugs and rock and roll. And they came, and that concert was one of the greatest concerts I've ever seen. I mean, the Young Gods played for, I don't know, they played for like 3 hours. They did every song they knew. They did the entire Bertolt Brecht, Kurt Weill, Bertolt Brecht back catalog, you know, you know, singing in German, and it was just like, it was an amazing experience to see that these people being released from that kind of oppression. It was remarkable. And for years, I went up to the wall and got a piece of it when they were knocking it down. I managed to grab a bit, and so I put it in a glass case and I had it on my desk in the studio, and so that always sat on the desk in front of me as a symbol of that. So,
all right, we are coming up on the mark here, so I want to get
there's
one.
A mark?
There's a mark of the length of the video that we want to get to. But okay, man, it has been awesome talking with you and hearing, especially how broad this got. And we got to talk about so many exciting things. So the last question I have for you, we'll go around the horn and do one each, is what do you have coming up? I mean, you just released this single, but obviously all of us in quarantine and, you know, we have time. What's next coming out? You've done a lot of re-releases or remasters lately of albums, but do you have a new album of fresh Cassandra Complex material? And tell me about it.
Okay, there is a new album. It is about 2/3 finished, maybe 3/4 finished. The song "Crying Like Saving the King" is the first song from that released from that album. I mean, if you saw the Infest live broadcast I did a couple of months ago, I did a bunch of new songs on that. They're works in progress. Basically, most of the songs are finished except for the final vocal tracks. I just got to get off my ass and literally get off my ass and actually finish the vocals. But, you know, I'm such a perfectionist, and I'm working on my own because, you know, Andy, my guitar player, is in Manchester, and Axel and Falk are in Hamburg, and I'm in London. So we're in 3 different places. So I had to design a whole new recording system where we can all record remotely together. So we all work on the internet on the same. We have the same systems in each place, so we can all work together. Even though
maybe you need a new pair of magical shoes to help finish those vocal takes.
Yeah, really. So anyway, I just need to finish the vocals and do the mixes. And there's about, I think we've got 8 or 9 songs finished so far. It's going to be, and they're brilliant. I mean, I think some of the songs, there's some of the best songs we've ever written. There's at least, I think one of the songs I think is the best song we've ever done, like easy. But yeah, I'm really, really happy. We have about 20, but I think we'll whittle it down to 8 or 9 that we really, really like. And then we have some more that are unfinished but are really good that we'll want to do for. So the album will come out probably, I'm thinking, hopefully February, March next year. Because I'll do the vocals, and then I want to make sure we have all the marketing and videos and things right before we release the album. We're actually doing the video for The Crown Lies Heavy on the King at the moment. We were shooting it this week. Martin, our lighting guy in Germany, he's been editing that at the moment. I just had the first draft through today, which being me, I went back and said, "This is shit, man. Fix it and make it better." So we're working on a video. We wanted to have the video out already, but
sure,
again, like, we're perfectionists.
Life is life.
So the video for the Crown Lies Heavy on the King will come out. There's a re-release of the Gnostic Christmas EP, which is an EP a very rare EP we did. I'm re-releasing that on Bandcamp for Christmas next month.
Cool.
And then the studio album will come out hopefully February, March next year. Tentatively titled No Gods, No Masters.
Nice. I like
my
that.
old anarchist slogan. So yeah, it's very political, but really, really great. I'm really happy. Every time I think about it, I'm like, oh my God, this is so good. I can't wait for people to hear it. It is really good. If you're really nice, I might send you some demos or something.
Well, it seems unlikely I will be, but I hope that it happens.
Anyway, and so that's that. And then I did a soul ambient album at the start of this year. I'd really like to do another one of those, even though no one listened to it. But whatever. It's nice to just do some nice, relaxing things at the moment as well. So that's that. And then Axel. I mean, the thing is, we all of the band all do. Even though we haven't done a Cassandra Complex. This is the first Cassandra Complex single in like nearly 20 years. But we're all professional. We're all involved in the music business. I mean, Andy is one of the things, to go back to the punk rock thing, one of the things that's always been very important for us is the fact that we could control what we do. And controlling what you do doesn't just mean writing the songs. It means controlling the entire workflow, the entire production process. So I do all the technical production stuff and the mixing and that level of production. Andy does all the business stuff. And so he got pissed off, well, the record company is fucking us around. So he went and did a law degree, and now he's a music business lawyer. So he's the lawyer for New Order and the Pixies and
wow,
and bands
we
like
need
that.
one of those.
Yeah, if you need a music business lawyer, he's your guy. And then Axel has a studio in Hamburg, and he does a lot of live. He's the live engineer for And One, Wolfsheim, V&V Nation. Jürgen, who used to play with us, he's the sound engineer for the Sisters. And Volker, who's our other guitar player and keyboard player in Germany, he works for various record companies and marketing companies. So we're all doing different things. And we all have different bands. So Volker and Axel are also in a band called Girls Under Glass.
Yep, I love them. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's Volker and Axel's band as well. But Axel's also got a band called Bam Bam Hara, and they've got a new single out this week called Tief Schwarz, Deep Black. Tief Schwarz is German for Deep Black. And they're like, it's an electro project. But I think Girls in the Glass also just did a live video that they recorded. So I don't know. Right. But all of us have other things coming out all the time. We're so involved with so many other bands. And I'm producing some other things. So, hey, anybody out there who wants a production done or a remix or a master, hey, let me know. Hit me up. So, yeah, that's what we do. We're always doing stuff all the time. But the big priority at the moment is this next Cassandra Complex album because it's going to be fucking outrageously good.
I'm really excited. And Colin, I asked you this, but now we're going to make it official because this is being recorded, that we're going to do a Cassandra Complex cover, and you gave us permission. You told us it was okay.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, see, that's official.
It's
Your lawyer will even back me up on this. That happened.
That's a whole different story. Yeah, that's a running joke between me and Andy. Is I'll like say, hey, let's do this, and Andy go like, have you thought of it? Like when we put Boris Johnson and so on the record.
Oh yeah, they were.
As a musician, I love this. As a lawyer, I'm really terrified.
I love that.
All right, around the horn. Your turn.
All right. So you have such anthemic, very easy to sing along to great choruses. How do those just come naturally? Is that one of those things that is that the first thing in the song that comes to you? and it's just that moment where you're like, light bulb, that's it? Or do you work really hard to get to those points? And
Both.
second, okay.
Both.
And please talk about that process.
Okay. I mean, all right, let's take the first hit we ever had, Moscow, Idaho, right? If you know that song.
Yeah.
It's the second single. I wrote that because there was a club in Leeds called Le Phonographique, which was in a basement. It was in the basement of a shopping mall, of all places, in Leeds city centre, Leeds Mall. One night I was going there and I was going to meet up with Paul, who was our keyboard player. He and I just started the band. And outside, you know, the phonographique was basically like, there was a thing that looked like almost like a telephone box that you walked into, and it would take you downstairs underneath. It was just this thing. And outside there was like a park bench style thing in the mall. And I was sitting on this bench, and the phonographique was one of the first goth industrial synthy 80s clubs, and they were playing, I don't know, they were playing Daft, and they were playing Simple Minds and stuff like that, and I could hear this coming up from up the stairs while I was sitting there, and I decided, you know, I'm going to write a song that people down there are going to dance to, and so I pulled out a notebook and I wrote Moscow, Idaho. You know, diddle, 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 diddle. Paul had actually played this a little bit earlier on when we were in the studio. Diddle, 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 you know, that little riff thing.
Yeah.
And so I wrote the whole song sitting there. And it was very deliberately written to be a song that these people below me, literally right below me, could dance to. And it was completely constructed to do exactly that, you know, and it did. That's exactly what happened. And so there was a very formally conscious process. But at the same time, the song is actually about, you know, the band X from Los Angeles? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. It's actually about them. Not many people know this, because I'd heard them on the radio earlier before, and they were talking like, and they were supposed to be a great American punk band. And to me, they were the opposite of that, because they did this interview and they were like, yeah, well, you know, we got kind of tired of touring. You know, we were playing all these shitty little places like Moscow, Idaho, to these like cowboys, and it was terrible. And I'm thinking, fuck you, you know, I'm from a fucking place like Moscow, Idaho, you know. I'm from one of these shitty little towns.
Right.
So fuck you, you know, and your LA elite bullshit. And so that song was all about what it's like to grow up in this small rural town, and that your life is actually important. You know, your life, you've got a life, and these things matter to you.
Kalamazoo represent.
Exactly. And so that's what Moscow, Idaho was about. And I love the fact that they actually, and it is a little town, you know, whatever. And I just like the fact that it was Moscow, Idaho, because it was Moscow. Everyone thinks of Moscow as being this big Russian cosmopolitan foreign city, but it's also a little town in Idaho where bands like X play. And I just love that you know, as you
that
know,
idea, yeah.
Yeah, that's this concept, and it could be anywhere. You know, it could be Moscow, it could be Russia, it could be America. It doesn't matter. Everybody's got their own lives, and everybody, you know, they're all in love with the girl next door. You know, and that's okay. You know that, and that's why we put James Stewart on the cover. You know, from It's a Wonderful Life. You know, because that idea that being in a small town America isn't necessarily a bad thing. You know, your life is, you've still got the same hopes and dreams and emotions as everyone else. So it was written. So even though I wrote the song in a very structured manner and very consciously trying to make a great modern synth pop, dancey, whatever thing, I was also fueled by that rage I had against X, and that rage that said, you know, fuck you. It was a giant fuck you song in that sense, and that empathy towards the kind of people I was writing about. And so those emotions fueled the process, but then the process itself I still had to go through the process of writing a great song, and there's a technique to that as well, and I guess that's why we when people asked us at the beginning what kind of music we always said cyberpunk, because there's that combination of the technique and the emotional aspect that is everything that we do, and that's what drives us and makes our songs in that sense.
I love this, that now we find out that was probably the original goth diss track. against X.
Absolutely, yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Boom, journalism.
The funny thing was, like, many years later, I was playing a concert in Vienna, I think, and there was a bunch of kids in the front row, and they were all wearing T-shirts that said "Welcome to Moscow, Idaho," and that had a map of Moscow, Idaho on them, right? And after
That's
the show,
awesome.
after the show, I'm like, "These T-shirts are awesome. Where did you get them?" They said, "We got them in Moscow, Idaho." I'm like, "What?" And so these kids were going on holiday, and they decided they would fly to America and visit Moscow, Idaho, to see what it was like.
That's awesome.
Right? And they went to the Civic Center and met the mayor and played him the song.
That's incredible. That is so freaking awesome. Wow.
Yeah,
that's gold.
Great.
That is gold.
Yeah, so that is absolute gold stuff.
Okay. So being intelligent, creative can be a burden sometimes, especially when you're going through something like a worldwide pandemic, where you can observe these things going on and you can say things with intellectual backing about how things should be working and stuff like that. It must be really stressful. How do you stay calm? Like, what advice would you give to people in a similar position to you to, like, de-stress at the end of the day so that you're able to fall asleep ever?
That's, I mean, as someone, I mean, well, you know yourself, because Ken and I were talking about this. We arranged this interview at 5 a.m. my time because I was awake with insomnia. So yeah, the how do you sleep at night is an interesting question. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm very privileged. And look around you. You know, look where I'm sitting. This is my studio. It's an outbuilding in the bottom of my garden. This is where I work. This is where I worked before the pandemic. It's where I work during the pandemic. It's probably where I work after the pandemic. I am very privileged in that I'm able to do that. And I'm very aware of that every single day when I walk in here. I'm like, oh my God, this is so great. You know, I have a workspace full of all the books and comics and technology that I ever wanted as a child. And I'm very, very aware. And every day I'm like, you know, I have a motto, like every night before I go to sleep, I always say, life is great, you know, because I always remind myself, this is fucking awesome. You know, I never let a day go by without telling myself, making myself remember, hey, you've got a great life. Life is great. And so, and you know, and I love video games. I love books and all this. The pandemic doesn't touch me. You know, the only time, I mean, my grocery gets delivered. I go to the coffee store to get my wife a coffee, and then I put on a mask. But apart from that, it's not a problem. I'm in a very, very, very privileged position, and I'm very aware of that. And so I could never preach to anyone like, hey, you should do this or you should feel that way, because most people don't have what I have. And unfortunately, I wish they did, and I work to the people can. But putting all that aside, you know, and like in a way, someone said to me, you know, every so often I'll do a business meeting, like, and they always start with, well, in these strange times. Like, no, you read a history book, man. This isn't strange and weird. You know, we've had pandemics before. I mean, I knew this pandemic was coming 10 years ago. The fucking CDC told me. If you just read a fucking book, you would know this was going to happen. I was completely aware that this was going to happen. It was inevitably going to happen. Every 120 years, this happens. You know, every 90 years, this happens. You know, the Spanish flu of 1919 killed, like, I don't know, it killed, the Spanish flu happened just at the end of the First World War. It killed more people in 6 months than the entire World War I did in 4 years, right? This is not new. Not at all. It's not strange. It's not weird. It's read a history book. And that's one way you can always prepare yourself for the future. Read history books and read science fiction. Right? Those are the two things you should.
That's advice to live by, right there. That's
yeah,
great.
Absolutely. Read history books and read science fiction. Then you would know this was going to happen. So this doesn't really surprise me, and like I don't give a shit in that sense, because I get to play music and I get to play video games. What do I have to worry about? And so none of this stresses me out. Now, again, I mean, yeah, work is hard. I mean, work is very hard for a lot of us because, you know, I freelance for a lot of tech companies, or did. I'm not doing too much of that at the moment because everyone's getting laid off, and that fucking sucks. And that's capitalism in action. You know, since this pandemic started, you know, Jeff Bezos at Amazon and Mark Zuckerberg have doubled their fortunes,
at least
tripled their fortunes in the last year. Those guys are making bank, you know, and banks, you know, the rich people are making bank off this pandemic, and they're gonna make even more because it's disaster capitalism. Because as people lose their jobs, they have to sell their houses, whatever. You know, the banks, the rich guys are going to buy them up at pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, those fucking bankers. I am one of those bankers.
I know. I get it, man. I understand. But that's it's the capitalist system at work, and the capitalist system is fucking us, and it's going to fucking a lot of people. And the whole thing. I mean, the fact that coronavirus has been politicized is insane. It's insane that, you know, I was reading the other day that nurses are saying that people in hospitals, especially in the US, they're literally with their dying breath still saying that coronavirus is a hoax.
It's not real.
It's not real. And they're getting intubulated and they're still trying to pretend that it's not real. I mean, that's fucking insane. It's literally insane. And the fact that you can literally lie in your hospital bed pretending that you're not, you know, that the sickness isn't killing you is just bizarre.
That is bonkers.
And that really shows the power of this kind of, you know, of
cults of personality.
Of this cult, you know, that they'll believe anything that they're told. Even, you know, we used to think in like, you know, it was I think it was in 1984, the end of 1984 by George Orwell says that the Big Brother had created the greatest, the last and final moment was that they had told the people, they had convinced the people not to believe the evidence of their eyes and ears. And I think that's like the final line or one of the final lines in 1984. And here we are. Here we are. People are literally not believing their evidence of their eyes and ears, even when they're coughing themselves to death. And that's the triumph of that totalitarianism system. And so that is a big problem. So yeah, I get it. I get a lot of people are really worried, but I don't know if I'm the guy to be asking for advice on that.
Sure.
What I'm doing is I'm spending a lot more time working on myself. I mean, I've got less work to do, less work being given to me by the capitalist system that I depend on like everybody else. And so I'm making records, and I'm making a lot less money making records than I do making technology. Sure. You know, because usually I run, you know, big projects for tech companies. But hey, I'm making records. And so that's making me happy and hopefully making other people happy. So you can do that. You can do things you can still do things for yourself or for society at large. Maybe you're not earning as much money, but hey, try and keep yourself afloat, I guess. And you know, and to go back to the magic thing, you know, meditate, do stuff, you know, start learning, read. You've got the internet. The one great thing we have on this pandemic that people did not before, we've got the fucking internet. You can press a button, see anything, hear anything, read anything that you want for practically free. And that is astonishing. It's absolutely astonishing. Yeah.
Take a minute longer.
That's fine. This has been absolutely amazing. It's been great talking with you, Rodney. I am really excited for the up and coming record. I am excited for the single. Everyone needs to go check that out. As a matter of fact, let's roll the single, The Crown Lies Heavy on the King, here at the end of the interview and play that so that everybody can enjoy it. But go check that out on Bandcamp, as well as the long and storied catalog that's available there of the Cassandra Complex that I was firing through last night. So I'm very excited for this. Thank you so much, Rodney, and everybody, keep it fucking dark, yo.
I think Donald Trump is clearly out of his mind.
You went to school on daddy's money, paid by slaves, you thought it was funny. make sure that someday you will know the crown lies heavy on the king. Wherever you may be, wherever you may go, the crown lies heavy on the king. Violence solves nothing, that's what you cried, but we'll pull down monuments to your pride. We won't build your wall, we'll build a wall for all, where we can stand tall. Some things you can never buy, no matter how hard that you try. Someday you'll run out of borrowed power, and then we'll make sure that you die. We'll make sure that someday you will know the crown lies heavy on the king. Wherever you may be, wherever you may go, the crown lies heavy on the king.
Mientras el mundo se rija por esos principios, mientras el mundo se rija por esos conceptos que tengan validez universal, porque son universalmente aceptados y consagrados por los pueblos, nosotros no aceptaremos que se nos prive de ninguno de esos derechos. Nosotros no renunciaremos a ninguno de esos derechos.
We'll make sure that someday you will know the crown lies heavy on the king. Wherever you may be, wherever you may go, the crown lies heavy on the king. The crown lies heavy on the king. The crown lies heavy on the king.
But nobody likes me. It can only be my personality, that's all.